Welcome to another edition of the Durham Bulls Podcast, where we celebrate everything that pertains to Durham Bulls. Our great players, our great managers, the histories, and the personalities that make up what is the Durham Bulls, the 31st Major League team. Patrick Kinas, broadcaster with the Durham Bulls. If you're joining us for the first time, we thank you. You can find these podcasts dropping every Monday on Apple and on Spotify, and you can actually watch these podcasts. God save the Queen there if you want to do that, but you can do that on the Durham Bulls YouTube channel at Durham Bulls TV. So our special guest this week is a friend of mine, and I'm so grateful for these podcasts, because if it weren't for these podcasts, I wouldn't have been able to find a reason to sit down and chat for 30 minutes with Brandon Guyer. But Brandon Guyer, former Durham Bull back in 2011, 2012, 2013, part of the Governor's Cup championship team that year, and then in 2014, longtime major leaguer with the Rays, played in the World Series with the Cleveland Indians, and just an all-around fantastic guy. Brandon Guyer joins us now. And BG, it's been far too long. How are you?
Dude, you are spot on. It's been far too long. I am doing great. It's great to see you. Honored to be asked to come on here, and look forward to our conversation.
It's interesting because I don't know where this conversation will go. I'm excited at the possibilities, but it dawned on me only a couple of minutes before you signed on for this interview. Jake Odorizzi right now is with the Durham Bulls. He made a rehab start. I know, right? He made a rehab start for the Bulls earlier in the homestand. He'll go again later on this weekend. And as the years go by, teammates and who's on what team when, they all kind of get garbled and blend together. And digging up the 2013 Governor's Cup championship squad for the Bulls, you and Jake and many others were key teammates. When I say Jake, what comes to mind? What memories come to mind for you?
Ooh, when I think of him, I think of, great teammate, great person, great guy. And when I think of people I played with and whatnot, people ask me about them as a player and whatnot, I always think of how they were as a person. Because a big part of what I do now is I try to get across to athletes, to become the absolute best player you possibly can be, it's all about becoming the best version of you as a person first. That's going to allow you to find out how good you can be as a player. And so when I think of Jake, I think of that, a great family man, great example for other players and people out there. And, what I always respect about him, the work he put in, and, he was always pretty even keel. He didn't let the ups and downs that baseball is going to bring get to him. And I think that's what led to a lot of his success. So I had no idea he is there right now. I haven't talked to him in a little while, but obviously hope he gets back. And if he gets back with the Rays, that would be awesome.
Yeah, we had a long conversation really out of nowhere a couple of days ago, because when he came up, I want to say he was maybe 22. The Rays had just acquired him from Kansas City, had a little bit of big league time. But you said he was even keel, but he was really quiet. And, he and I from small towns in Illinois, we had that in common then. But even then, that made it difficult to kind of extract anything more than maybe a 1 or 2 sentence answer out of him. But when he came up, he approached me. I was behind the cage watching some early work, and he came up and just, how you doing? And it was definitely the longest conversation I've ever had with him. But the phrase that he mentioned to me is, a lifetime has happened since the last time I was here in Durham. And it's only 10 or 11 years, but you can, I'm sure, identify with that on how much life changes on the field, off the field, personally, professionally, in such a small amount of time, can't you?
Yeah. And you as well. You said you have a 2-year-old son now. I had no idea. It was one of the first things you said. Obviously, you're a proud dad. I'm a proud dad. And so off the field, family, a lot of good, a lot of bad. That's just life. Something, a saying I tell myself. I literally have a sign on my wall here behind the computer, and I tell athletes all the time, it's not supposed to be easy. So when we're on this journey, this heroic journey, this journey to finding out who we are and how good we can be on and off the field, there's going to be trials, there's going to be tribulations, there's going to be amazing times too. So to answer your question, man, there's been so many of those since you and I have talked, man, get sent down, injuries, overcoming mental health stuff. There's literally been so much going on. But as I sit here today, So very, very grateful for the what I like to think of as a gauntlet that I went through, and a lot of players go through on their journey in life, and not just players, but people as well. And man, I feel like anything, and I'm grateful for it because for a lot of reasons, but because what I do now with mental strength training for athletes is, I like to think I went through it all and I dealt with everything mentally and physically that anyone could ever think of in the game of, we can just say baseball, like fear of failure, anxiety, stress, 7 injuries, dealing with the yips at times after actually bunting a ball in Durham and getting stitches in my middle finger of my throwing arm and coming back and not being able to grip the ball. Man, anything mentally, physically, I've dealt with it. And it was such a grind, especially since you and I have talked, but so grateful. It gave me the wisdom and the experience and the platform, to do what I'm doing now. And, whenever I look back, there's been so much going on. But I'm just so very appreciative because without all of that, I'm not who I am. I don't have what I have, such as family and whatnot. And I don't have the ability to give back and help players as they're on their journey that's going to be filled with tough times. I'm not able to help them, navigate those as much if I didn't have those. So might have been a different answer than you were expecting to go there, but man, so much happens in just 10 years, when you're playing this game or just life in general.
No, there are no wrong answers on this podcast, and it resonates. It resonates. So I'm sure with people out there listening, even if they're not athletes, just in terms of navigating life and all the family and business and other issues that are cropping up. So let's start present day for the fans who haven't necessarily followed your journey and your present day impact on sports and on people. Give the fans a sense of what you're doing now as far as Major League mindset and how that all came to be.
Yeah. So let me rewind actually. So back from 2000 to 2003, my first 3 years in high school, I definitely was a very below average baseball player. Like as a junior, had no colleges talking to me, no letters, nothing like that. And it wasn't, I had pretty good physical skills. So it wasn't that. I wasn't lacking physical skills. I was blocking them, and more so my mindset, the fear, the inability to handle adversity, being undisciplined, not having set routines, letting things happen by chance, not responding good to things out of my control. That was me those first 3 years of high school. So a coach recommended a couple different books, specifically one called Heads Up Baseball, written by Ken Ravizza, who was with the Rays when I was there. And we can talk about him, pretty much the mental performance pioneer in baseball, him and Harvey Dorfman. Read that book, but didn't just want to categorize and be a librarian of the knowledge. I applied it, went out senior year, and I feel like I was given a key that unlocked myself. It didn't change who I was, but Patrick, it allowed me to find out who I was and how good I can be. It allowed me to get to that, extra 30% of potential that was just lying dormant inside of me. So doing so and training my mind intentionally heading into senior year 2004, I chipped away at what was in the way. Like I said earlier, fear, anxiety, handling failure, all of that stuff. I chipped away at that. And because of that, I was able to get closer and closer to that masterpiece that's sitting inside of me and everybody else. So since 2004, I have been obsessed with it. So when I had my second Tommy John, a rehab from it, in 2020, I'm in spring training with the San Francisco Giants. And this is minor league. They wouldn't give me a big league job in spring training. So I'm going to minor league camp to try to get back. And COVID hits and they sent us home. And up to that point, I already kind of knew what I wanted to do. I've been obsessed with the mental side of the game for a long time. I've been fortunate to work with some of the greats in the game, Ken Ravizza, Brian Kane, and some others. And so when I retired in 2020 from playing, Zoom was starting to get big and a light bulb went off. I was like, I can make an impact, do some virtual lessons with players and take everything I learned. And so I got right into it. I started Major League Mindset, and just like my career, it was a grind. It took me 4 months to get one player to work with. I was like, oh, I'm a former big leaguer, close to a decade in the big leagues, this, that. It'll be easy. Everyone's going to want to work with me. It's not how it works. And just trying to figure out the business world and create a business, all that. It was fun and I really enjoyed it and still very much do enjoy it, but it was a grind.
Who was
So
the first player?
the first player was a kid named Easton Roadhouse.
Okay.
It's a cool name, by the way. He was a closer at Valparaiso University. So he was the first one, and I gave that lesson. I gave it away. It was like an Instagram giveaway. And then so from that was in 2020, and really I didn't want to rely on everything that I just learned throughout my experience and whatnot. I wanted to take my journey playing, working with some of the best in the mental game. And now I took that next year and a half really, and I'm glad I didn't have a lot of clients or players because I needed that time to go get certified to just go deep in research and now become the best coach possible. So I applied the same discipline, same work ethic, determination, persistence, everything as I did when I played to everything I'm doing with Major League Mindset. And fast forward, so it's 4 years later since I started it, and just it's just, man, where it's at. I wouldn't have told you if you would ask me if Major League Mindset's where it's at right now. If you would ask me that in 2020, I probably would have said no. Like last year, I was fortunate to get back to the big leagues and be the mental strength coach for the Los Angeles Angels. With the University of Virginia right now, University of Houston, Prep Baseball Reports, official mental strength coach. Like, man, it's I have way more meaning and purpose than I've ever had in my life. And I love playing, and I feel like that was great. And yes, so grateful for the platform it gave me. But now I'm able to make an impact on people's lives, more specifically off the field, which is going to lead to them on the field, showing up like they can on a consistent basis. So yeah, I'm traveling around the country speaking. I'm doing 8-week live online trainings. That's the biggest thing I do, like make the most impact, and then one-on-one sessions and then work with those different teams. So a lot going on. I got 3 young kids of my own, like we talked about. So staying busy and really just loving it all.
And not to make this an infomercial, but I'd be silly not to ask you. I mean, I know you work with high level athletes, professional athletes, college athletes. Do you work with, 8, 10, 12-year-olds? Because hurdles exist for everybody, right? So, I mean,
Sure.
is there a website? Is there, Instagram, Facebook? Where can people go, parents go who are listening to this, or young athletes? Where can they go to find out more information on this? Because they may be kind of nodding their heads right now saying, you know what, I have some things too that I can't quite get through, and if there's a way to figure out help to hurdle them, that might help me in my career and in my business.
Yeah, no. So, BrandonGuyer.com, you can find all the information. Brandon Guyer on all social medias. And I try to put out a lot of free content, especially on all the social media channels, just to give these players just like these little, and also I just started a Major League Mindset podcast, on episode like 26 now. I do a new short one every single day. So think like 3 to 6, 7 minutes long. Every Wednesday I have former teammates on to ask them the number one mental tool that helped them the most in their career. So those are the ways you can find me. But yeah, like I try to simplify everything so my 9 and 8-year-old could understand it. Now, the majority of players that come through, especially the 8-week live online training, are, I would say, 10 through college. But I simplify it so they can understand it, because this game and baseball and softball and every sport, it's much easier when it's simplified. So I make sure to do that. And just an example, like my 8-year-old son, you might not think this, but he has a big fear of getting hit by a pitch right now. And
your son has a fear of being hit
that's
by
why I
a
say he must have got my wife's genes. No, but yeah, so he's got a fear, and so like that's at 8 years old. I've had since I retired, and we can maybe get into like how I got hit all the time, was nicknamed La Pinata, all of
might
that.
be on my list.
Yeah, so a lot of people ask me like, what can I do to help? And I have like, I'm not trying to sell this at all, but I do have a hit by pitch program that you can find on the website. But that's not why I'm bringing it up. I'm bringing it up because so many people since I've retired have reached out like, I wish I knew about what, your tips and stuff, because my son quit a year ago. Like it's an epidemic. A lot of players have it and don't get over it, so they quit baseball. And I didn't know that when I played. No one told me that really. But when I retired, I realized, man, and now I'm starting to see it with my son. Like he's in there and just like stepping out after he got hit by a pitch bad one time. So We'll see how that goes. I'm working with him, but I'm dad to him. So,
Sure.
but yeah, anyway, so that's where you can find me and what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I mean, you've always struck me and certainly have been a really, really cerebral athlete. I first saw you when you were in AA with the Tennessee Smokies. I was with the Carolina Mudcats then in the Southern League, and you were diving in for balls, getting hit, then running through walls. You played like a linebacker, and I know football was very important to you growing up in Herndon, but somewhere in your head you have all these things categorized or cataloged, but did you keep a journal as embedded as you were in the research and the reading when you're 19, 20, 21 years old and on the kind of the grind toward minor league and then Major League Baseball? We tend to forget a lot of things along the way. I mean, I wish I had journaled things once I had started broadcasting minor league baseball in 1993. I didn't. So a lot of the stories that have been very important to me then, unless they're triggered by some memory, they're gone and I can't retrieve them. So over the years, I mean, is this something where you would take 15 minutes at the end of every night and write down some notes or some key moments that you can now reflect on now within the work that you do?
Great question, Patrick, and 1000%. So I'm busting out for those watching or just listening, I'm showing, because when you brought that up, I wanted to show you this. It's a Major League Mindset workbook. It's like 80 different worksheets and infographics. So right here, it's called a champion journal. That I like to call it a champion journal, and it's post-game reflection. And really, what's good about it is we leave success notes for our future self. So when you're going through a really good time, we'll write down what are the things you're doing that's leading to that. So when you inevitably struggle a month or a week or whatever it is from now or next year, boom, I'm going to go to my journal. This is what I was doing. These were my habits. These were my behaviors. These were my routines. This is my thought process. This was my mechanics when I was locked in. Okay, let me go back to that. And that really cultivates a win or learn mindset. And yes, I did that a lot. And the champion journal process, for anyone listening who's curious, I call well, better adjustments. After every game or practice, real quick, what did you always start with? What did you do well? Anything in your control or, outcome oriented if you want. I like to think process oriented with what's in our control, but what did you do really well? If we can't find anything we did well, there's a much bigger problem going on. So what did we do well? What could I have done better? And what adjustments will I make next time in that same situation? So it's like a post-game debrief, but you're leaving these notes like you talked about for your future self. So yes, I did that. Journaling is huge. One of the biggest things I do with athletes right now is pre and post-game journaling. So an example for pre-game journaling, I have them write down. I have one of the biggest things I do. And if anyone ever asks me, what's something you would tell your younger self? Patrick, I tell them I would help them. I would tell my younger self, get to know yourself, create an identity, name that identity on and off the field. Because my identity growing up, especially when I was struggling in high school and whatnot, was only as an athlete. All my self-worth was tied to being an athlete. So when I inevitably struggled, it was a threat to my identity and I was miserable to be around and I felt worthless. Okay, so I would tell my younger self, and I tell athletes now, name it and create an identity on and off the field. So once they do that, when they get to the field, they write down, I am. So let's just say, give you an example of a player. I'm not going to say his name, but his identity, the best to ever play. Top of the journal, I am the best to ever play. You're reaffirming who you are when you write this in your journal when you get to the field. Then you say, I will. You say the number one intention you have for that day. I will compete in the present moment. Maybe you're struggling, you're in the past or you're in the future too much. You just want to be in the present. That's the number one intention. Because when we set the intention, Patrick, our attention follows and is on it during competition. So we set that intention and then we go over 3 keys to execute that intention. Maybe pre-pitch routine, control the controllables, utilize your breath. Okay. And then to end that pregame journaling, we go 3 gratitudes. This might be the most important part because if we're not in a good headspace, we're going from negative to positive, and gratitude's the number one way to do that. And really, so you can have this appreciation and change your perspective before you head out to that field. So that's pregame. And then postgame, we talked about the champion journal, well, better adjustments. So long way to me answer your short question, but yes, I definitely did do that. And that's a big part of what we do.
people would much rather hear from you than they would me. I mean, they're tired of my voice here in Durham. I've been here 12 years. What a great answer! What a deep answer! What a necessary answer! And as you were describing everything that you are doing and the processes by which that you're arriving at your answers and at your strategies, it struck me. Uh, Part of my job is, I would say, a big part of my job is telling stories of athletes and telling stories of the people on the field, on the court, whatever event that I'm doing. But I love connecting people to one another who I think could really benefit or complement one another. And as you were describing what you just did, one name popped into my head of somebody that I would like to connect you with if you're interested, Apollo Ono. Who is a short track Olympic speed skater who I've gotten to know over the last several years. And he's in a similar business space, athlete space as you are. And it's a lot of motivation. It's breaking down not, ball strikes, not through a scouting lens. It's breaking it down through like a human lens, a DNA lens, an approach lens. And as I hear you speak about this through baseball specifically, I see, Apollo is on, he's talking with corporate CEOs about the process. And it's not him as an athlete, it's him just as a human who's able to look at things through a different lens, break it down differently. Because I think if you A, hear it from a different voice, or B, the building blocks are explained differently or laid out in a different language that really lands with you, then I think you can kind of unlock the potential for whoever you're trying to reach. And I just think he'd be, I don't know if you've ever met him or know much about his background. I think you and he would have some incredibly high level conversations about this topic.
I would love that. I obviously know a lot about him, watching him and whatnot, and I didn't know what he's up to now, but if you'd like to make that connection, I would definitely appreciate that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. So let's change gears a little bit, because I know the fans are thrilled to hear about what you're doing now and the impact you're having in the game. Your time in Durham. I mean, we're dusting off the memories here. 10 years, 11 years, 13 years since you last played here in Durham. We saw you briefly in Charlotte a few years ago when you were with the White Sox. But when I say Durham and Durham Bulls and games here and moments under Charlie Montoya in your time here, what come to mind for you, and how vivid are these memories that you have of Durham?
Oof, they are great. Man, what always on a personal level, and then I'll get to the team. On a personal level, I still remember my first time getting called up back in 2011. We just ended a rough game, or I don't know about the team, but I had a rough game in 2011. And Charlie calls me into the office, and this is May 5th, 2011.
Yeah.
And, I'm the way he's looking and whatnot, I'm expecting I'm just gonna have the day off tomorrow. And he's just calling me in to say, just flush it, get rid of what just happened. You're gonna have the day off, clear your mind. You're good. Especially when I walked in, that's just what the vibe was kind of like. And he's like, Brandon, I just want to let you know that you're getting called up to the big leagues. Goosebumps as I say that. And I was like, wait, what? And he's like, yeah, they're playing against the Orioles at Camden Yards. And I'm like, okay, that's a stadium I went growing up to. Like, this just keeps getting better and better. So I leave that, and I go immediately call my wife, my dad, my family, and fly out early next morning. And so that's a big memory for me, is getting that call, and Charlie, how he went about doing it, because I wasn't expecting it. So on a personal level, that stands out. Also, I really enjoyed when we had the old school game. I don't kill me for not knowing the name of the stadium, but the old Durham Bull Stadium. I played there once.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
The DAP, Durham Athletic Park, right down the road.
Yes. That's such a cool experience. But you brought it up earlier that 2013, it's 2013, right?
13 we won. 14, the same two teams played again, and Pawtucket won it here, but we won up in at McCoy Stadium in 13. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. So 2013, and I still remember celebrating in the clubhouse, and that right there as a team, going through that and everything. That was for sure, as a team aspect. That's what jumps out. But just just Durham in general, that ballpark, the history, the cool blue wall, blue monster, everything about it, man. It was just, such a good experience. And, obviously we all want to get to the big leagues, but if we're going to play minor league ball, I don't think there's a better place to play than there. So super, super grateful for the time I had there and the teammates I had, the coaches I had, and all of that.
Yeah, that's a common theme. I've heard that phrase unprompted from Miles Masterboni. I've heard it from Tristan Gray. I've heard it from Ryan Stanek, and I heard it from others, and they all agree, universally that this is if you're not in the big leagues, that Durham is the place to be. So I want to let me go back, because as I was prepping for this interview with you, Brandon, some memories of me and you and some conversations we had. We're just beginning to kind of rush back to the front of my brain. And I want to make sure if I am remembering these accurately or if it's a little bit of embellishment. But I seem to recall, as I read about your first major league home run, you led up right to the story. You're called up by Charlie Montoya. That was that's one of the questions I ask in every show is, tell me about how you found out you're going up and your first day. And as I was thinking about your first day and I read a little bit about it, it jogged a memory. So now we'll continue the story. You go to Baltimore. You're in the lineup against the Orioles. You hit a home run in your first at bat. This is where my brain then went. I'm like, I now remember this. Didn't you tell me that your parents and or your wife did not get into Camden Yards as you hit the home run? Didn't they listen to it on the radio in a parking lot? Do I have that right?
You do. Well, my dad was there. My mom couldn't make it to the game, but all my family and friends were there, but not my wife. So my wife was the sportscaster for Fox 5 in DC, and she had a 6 o'clock show. And then, so she was battling traffic to get there. She was literally in the parking lot listening to it on the radio as I hit it. So we always talked about that moment. Like, she's like, yeah, I'm going to be there. I can't wait to watch your first game. If if you get caught up and when you get caught up. And she was so close, but it was factors out of her control that stopped it. But yeah, for that story, that's a funny part. The next, I guess it's not funny. It is funny now looking back. The next two at bats I struck out, and then 2 days later I got sent back down. So it couldn't have started any better, and then it quickly spiraled down. But that's life. That's baseball.
And of your three kids, I wanted to talk about your family later, but it struck me when I read the names of your kids. And again, you didn't have kids when you played here in Durham, but your middle child's name is Camden. Is there any significance of the name Camden and growing up going to Camden Yards and hitting your first home run at Camden Yards in your first at bat?
Oh, dude, 100%. Yes, that's what it is. And you know what's also funny? My youngest or second son, Cooper, was born on May 6th, like the same day I got, obviously May 6th, 2018 or 19. I should probably know that really well. When you have three, you just kind of forget. But he was born on May 6th, so like the anniversary of that. So kind of funny.
That's great. And then you and I share a birthday as well. I remember noticing that January 28th.
Let's go. I didn't know that.
That's right. Yeah, you, me, Neil Armstrong, and right there. It's the three.
You probably told me that on one of our conversations on the bus on the road trips. And,
well, what's interesting about those bus trips, as we're sitting here with Brandon Guyer, is very rarely do players get on a bus. And back then we're traveling with one bus. Now we're traveling with two, sometimes three. So it's much different now in the minors than what it was even 10 years ago when you were here. But the staff always sits in the front. The manager's in the front right, hitting coaches usually across the aisle front left, and then the rest of the staff, the other coaches, the athletic trainers, and the broadcaster. The players, as they file onto the bus, and you well know, everybody goes to the back. They don't want to be anywhere close to the staff. They don't want to, they want to do their own thing, play their card games, do whatever. They don't want to be up anywhere near the staff here at AAA. Except for you. Your seat when I was with the Bulls in 2012 was my first year with the Bulls. So that was your first full season with the Bulls in 2012 or second full season?
Second, yeah.
So, but when you came onto the bus early in the season, I don't remember where we were going, but there were 6 more seats on the if you're going back in the bus with the driver behind you on the right side. There were 6 empty seats between me sitting in like 4th seat on the left in the bus, and then the rest of the group in the back. You sat with all these other options in the row right behind me against the window. And that was your spot for that year. And so that's what I remember about you. That's how I got to know you so well. And we chatted. And I remember you ate just a ton of healthy food, which made me sick. I mean, it was kale. It was, I mean, the things I'd never ever seen at Whole Foods.
Away from the kale, but yeah.
And I had my bag of candy and Smarties and Skittles, and we were complete opposites. But that's where I got to know you, and I had so much respect, and I never really understood why you wanted to sit, away from the rest of the players and more up front. But that's what I recall about getting to know you, because that was my first AAA year. I was lost. I was having some issues. And was just trying to, again, find my identity at this level and convince myself I was good enough to be at this level. And the first couple of months were a struggle, but you were an anchor. You were really, really comforting, and you were always calm. And I appreciated your ability to speak on a high level. And that helped me through the first couple of months, because it wasn't easy for me that year.
Dude, I appreciate that, man. I really enjoy those conversations. And the main, obviously I love the teammates. I love the camaraderie. I'm with them all the time at the field and, do stuff off the field. But those bus trips, I was always very much, I like the conversations with you and whatnot, but I like to prioritize recovery. And yeah, I can be up all night and play cards with them and everything. And yeah, what I did was different. And when anyone ever said like, yo, he's a little different, he's a little weird, I loved it. I ate it up because I didn't want to be normal. I don't like being normal.
Did they say that? I never heard anybody say that, but I mean, across your career, did you feel like
they knew what they did? I did different stuff. Like I meditated before it was cool. I brought all that healthy food on. People would give me crap all the time. And it gave me so much confidence because I knew I was doing something different, but I was doing something that I knew was part of my process to becoming the best version of me on and off the field. And so whenever anyone looked at it like, oh man, that's not normal. Good. I'm not normal. I don't want normal results. So I'm going to do not normal stuff. And so that was just a little part of it. My reason to sit there and whatnot, and nothing against the teammates. I love them and whatnot. So that's funny you bring that up, but I really did enjoy those conversations.
Yeah, I did too. And they were special. And there have not been many moments like that on buses with players like that since. I'll just kind of leave it at that. So, it was unique. It was you, and it was very special. So I do appreciate that. Before we move on to a different topic, I did want to touch on any memories you might have had. We talked a little bit about the Governor's Cup in 13. The Bulls won that championship. I remember Shelley Duncan dousing everybody he could in just a chaotic clubhouse celebration at McCoy when the Bulls won the Governor's Cup in 2013. The day before they clinched it, though, there was a game, an epic. I mean, epic is a word that gets thrown around in baseball. And as far as AAA goes, the previous game went into the 14th inning. It was 0-0 through 13. Eddie Romero had just come up from AA, and I think he threw 3 or 4 scoreless innings. But the tension for a AAA game, a championship game, was off the charts huge. And the game went past midnight. The Bulls win it in 14 innings. It took almost 6 hours to play. And then it was a foregone conclusion really the next day that Merrill Kelly was going to, shove it and clinch the title. Do you have any recollections of that game that led to the championship?
I'm going to be straight up honest right now. I have 0. And I blame my 4 concussions in high school football for that. Now that you bring it up, like it's starting to bring back a little bit. But if you were to ask me straight up, Brandon, do you remember anything about the game and not have explained anything about it? The game before we won the championship, I could not have told you we went 14 innings. And I'm just being completely honest right now. I don't, but I do remember winning the championship, Shelley Duncan doing that, and me drinking some after the game, and I very rarely drank, and so just a couple just got me a little buzzed because I wasn't a big drinker. But yeah, great times, man.
All right, so fair answer, and I know some people who remember like pitch sequences from 15, 20 years ago. Scott Pose, who calls games for me, played in the big leagues with 3 squads. I mean, he has that kind of memory where he can recall, what the grass smelled like and what the count was and where the pitch was. I'm not like that. It takes some notes, or it takes some type of trigger to get me back into that point. Then I can see it. Then I can feel it like pitch by pitch, but as far as I align more with you as far as the memory goes. One thing I did want to chat about that I'm sure your memories are much greater and fresher. Growing up a Chicago Cubs fan in Middle Illinois, my dream when I was 8 years old was to experience the Chicago Cubs World Series championship. The last one happened in 1908, prior to 2016.
Well, you finally got
it. Yeah, so
at our expense.
In 1984, so I'm 14 years old then, the Cubs win the National League East. I can hear Harry Carey's call. Rick Sutcliffe threw a complete game win with Jody Davis at Pittsburgh to clinch it. My mom had gotten me a Chicago Cubs National League East, because they were in the East then, National League East Division Championship t-shirt from Kmart. And we had a long neck bottle of 7-Up in the freezer because I was 14. And so when they did clinch, I ran out on Chicago Avenue, shook up the bottle and tried to spray it like champagne like the big leaguers did. So it never happened. Again, I was disappointed again in 89 when the Cubs got beat by Will Clark and the Giants in the playoffs. So anyway, as I got into pro baseball, you check your fandom and your fan card at the door. So it doesn't matter what team I rooted for. Once I got to Clinton, Iowa in 1993 as a Giants affiliate, I remember this distinctly. Jack Mull was my manager in 1993. Early April, first job out of college, and got on the bus, and the Cubs had just won a game against whoever. And I get on the bus, and I was kind of in a good mood. I'm like, hey, and Jack is already sitting, cap still on. I think it was a commuter, so I think he might have even still been in uniform. And I walked past him to my seat, and I'm like, hey, let's say the Cubs beat the Cardinals. And Jack even then, he was probably 60 years old, stone-faced. And he said, I don't care about that. How did the Giants do? And it kind of hit me at that moment that all that matters, because I was so young in pro baseball, I thought I knew so much about baseball, and it turns out I knew zero. All that mattered was if the Giants had won. Didn't matter if anybody in the organization, if Shreveport lost, if San Jose lost, if Clinton lost, but if the Giants won at the big league level, it was a good day. But Jack didn't give two rats about the Cubs. And so that sat with me over my career. So as the years went by broadcasting, my interest and fanaticism for the Cubs waned year by year, decade by decade. So now let's get back to 2016. I've been in the game now for a while. The Cubs are now in the World Series. You're playing for the Cleveland Indians in 2016. And you want to talk about a World Series that Earth could have melted because of the two teams playing in the World Series, with the histories and the disappointments and the near misses with the Indians and with the Cubs. And now they meet, and somebody has to win it. And that year, you're with Cleveland. You played a couple of games in the division and the ALCS, but in the World Series, you're in every single game, and you're producing. And I don't want to talk about the entire World Series, but I do want to talk about Game 7, because Game 7 was one of those days where I'm in my front room watching it. We have former Bulls, you on Cleveland side, Mike Montgomery, who pitched for the Bulls, in the bullpen for the Chicago Cubs. And that was the one day really since I got into pro ball where I allowed myself to be that 8-year-old kid rooting for the Cubs. No offense. But that Game 7 was an unbelievable competition with so many twists and turns, rain delays, big hits, rallies, heartbreak, euphoria. It's all there. Can you give us a perspective of what playing in a Game 7 of the World Series involving the Cubs and the Indians, what was like?
Yeah, I mean, dude, well, everything came full circle. I was drafted by the Chicago Cubs out of University of Virginia as a junior. So I started my minor league career with them, and I was with them for 3 or 4 years when I got traded to the Tampa Bay Rays in 2011. And then obviously I played for Joe Madden with the Tampa Bay Rays for a couple of years. So when we played the Cubs, obviously the history of both franchises and everything. I think the two at that time, the two teams in baseball who had the longest drought without winning a World Series and whatnot. And so we have that, and then we have I'm playing against my former manager and Davey Martinez, who's the bench coach for them, the team that drafted me. So a lot of the same trainers that were in the minor leagues are now in the big leagues with them. So a lot of familiar faces on that team. Mike Montgomery, he was a roommate of mine. Actually, the first hit in the World Series was against him, funny or not, in Game 1. But he had the final laugh as he got the final out of the World Series. But dude, it was crazy. Game 7, I wasn't starting that game. I knew I would probably get in at some point. So as always, I was ready, like I always was. And but I approached it the same as I would any other game. I didn't want to make it more than it was. Because I already knew I was gonna have the adrenaline. I was gonna have the high arousal, the nerves, the butterflies, especially when I got on deck, bottom of the 8th. Um, 2 outs and Aroldis Chapman pitching. My heart's racing. I'm biggest at bat of my life, but I went to the mental tools that I've been training nonstop. Basically saying, this is a good thing. Thank you, body. You're giving me energy. Not think, oh shoot, why am I nervous right now? This isn't good. I looked at it as a very good thing, as I was taught to, and I used it all to fuel me. And then walking up, I'm saying, bring it on. Like this wristband right here. Bring it on, Chapman. Chapman, this is what I trained for. Bring it on. It doesn't guarantee success, but I'm putting myself in the best position to succeed. So I work a good at bat and get a nice line drive double. And then like I visualized so many at bats in that situation. Once we found out we were playing the Cubs and I was going to face Chapman a lot, being a platoon hitter, I did not visualize the next batter, Rajai Davis, tying it up on a home run. And I remember still rounding the bases when the ball went over because I didn't think he hit it high enough. And then it hit the cameraman. I was like, oh my God, we just tied it. Bottom of the 8th, Game 7 of the World Series. Chapman's at like 30 pitches. We're about to win the World Series. And that's like the first thing that went through my head. I just like, oh my God, this is real. Wasn't meant to be, obviously, but what can you do? But it's going to go down as one of the best World Series and World Series games in history, I think. So just dude, so cool to be a part of it.
I was so conflicted. I mean, obviously being a Cubs fan, I was rooting for the Cubs, but knowing you as I had the previous years and seeing you clutch up time and time again in the series and in that 7th game, and Mike Montgomery and I were pretty close when he was here, and I remember texting him at the parade after the Cubs had won it a couple of days later after he got that last out. That's what working in this game is all about. Right?
Yeah.
It's you root for everybody. You may be rooting for a team, but there isn't anybody who's been in a Bulls uniform or a Mudcats uniform or a Kane County Cougar uniform or a Clinton Giant uniform who I have not rooted for as with all of my being, because it is so hard to get to the major leagues, and it's a brotherhood of just such a wide assortment of people and backgrounds and interests and values, but we're forced to kind of be on the same boat for 6 months a year, 18 hours a day, and you can't help but want to support them as much as possible. So it was really hard with you on one side and Montgomery, and I think John Maley was the hitting coach for the Cubs then too, who I'd come across in Marlins days.
Yeah. No, it's what can you do? It wasn't meant to be. Happy for you that your team won it.
Well,
But such great memories that I'll never forget. My family was there. It was so cool.
Do you who do you stay in touch with as far as the game goes now? I mean, you've been out of pro baseball for about 4 years, but I mean, we have lifetime friends from the game, no matter how long we've been away.
Sure. Yeah, I would say the most Chris Archer, Brad Miller, Jan Gomes, Kevin Kiermaier. Those are the 4 I would say the most. Just once again, just great guys, man, and love them. So grateful I got to play with them and still have a relationship with them. Haven't seen them in a while. But yeah, those are the guys that stand out. Other guys here and there and whatnot, Steve Pierce, and stuff. But yeah, those guys are those are the most for sure.
And fans may not remember, or they may not know, but the trade that brought you to the Rays, it was you and Chris Archer from the Cubs.
And Sam Fold.
And Sam Fold.
the
No
GM
real.
of the Phillies now.
So it's interesting. I wanted to talk about that as well. So with Sam running Philadelphia, your teammate Brandon Gomes running the Dodgers. Stephen
How
Vogt is now the manager of the
about that?
Guardians. Craig Albernaz is on his staff there.
Yeah.
Um, did Cole Figueroa is in the front office, high ranking guy with the Tampa Bay Rays. Are you surprised at all? But I'm really not. Are you surprised at all that those guys with their minds are now, you know, outward facing executives and managers in Major League Baseball?
No, not at all. Those guys, if I were to pick anyone, them,
Mm.
I could see Chris Archer being something along that line here. I know he's kind of doing special assistant stuff with the Dodgers right now. I could see that turning him going up fast, whether it's with them or someone else. But
Mhm.
yeah, the Vody, Figueroa, Brandon Gomes, Sam Fold, not a surprise at all.
Yeah. So as we wind things down here with Brandon Guy, first off, thank you for your time. Mike
Mhm.
Burling, now the VP here for Capital Broadcasting, he was the GM of the Bulls when you were here. He wanted to hear the story about La Pinata, the nickname that was given to you, the time that you had in the big leagues. You led the American League twice in hit by pitches, and really neither of those years you were and I mean you weren't playing 150 games a year. You were sometimes doing it
Mhm.
in 100 games or 110 games.
Mhm.
A, where did the nickname come from? B, he wanted to know why it happened so much. So what? I mean, I know you're asked this a lot by a lot of people because that's one of the things that when they think of Brandon Guyer as a big league ball player, that's one of the first things they think of.
Yep. It's a badge of honor. No, so I nickname first. I got it from Joe Buck during the World Series. I got hit first at bat in the World Series, bases loaded. I get hit by John Lester bringing a run. I got hit by Aroldis Chapman a couple other times the World Series, and he thought that nickname or something, so he said it, and then it just kind of took off, La Pinata. So that's where it first came from. Um, but yeah, so if you were to look it up. Fun fact, all-time hit by pitch. I'm the all-time hit by pitch leader per plate appearance in Major League Baseball history. Anyone over 1,000 plate appearances. And the reason for that, so I faced a lot of lefty pitchers being a right-handed hitter. I stand normal distance away from the plate, but when I would like kind of load and stuff and my front foot would come down, it'd come down close to the chalk. And a lot of lefty pitchers didn't want me to get extended. And so they're pitching me in a lot, whether it was cutters or whatever. And, I talk about mental training. I just wired myself, and I've been like this for a long time. I just didn't move. And I looked at it like I'm getting a walk, I'm getting a single, my on base percentage is going up, I'm helping the team, let the other guys drive me in. So I looked at it in a very positive way. I got hit over 100 times in the big leagues. I never missed one game. It's a lot of luck, but I never missed one game. I didn't wear any protective gear. It was just something I wired myself, and I looked at it like a good thing, and lefty pitchers pitched me in. You put that all together, that's kind of how you come up with that. And that's where La Pinata comes
Yeah,
from.
and still happy with do people still call you that now?
Yeah, I get people sending me pics, cards to autograph. Can you inscribe it La Pinata? And it's hilarious to me. People might think like, oh, I'm sorry, like it's a bad thing. No, why? Like it was part of my game.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it to be quite honest. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. A couple of final things. If you're watching the podcast here with Brandon Guyer, you're clearly sitting either in your office or your game room, and all kinds of memorabilia hanging on the wall. Give the fans a little quick virtual tour of some of the things of significance on the wall right behind you.
Yeah. So it's part of my AM routine. I am a very, I think the number one tool on the mental side of the game for life and sports is gratitude. And so I want to soak up and appreciate everything in my life. So behind the um, computer here, pictures of my family. So I look at them and just realize how blessed I am to have them. But as I'm jumping on a mini trampoline, you can't see that. Every time in the morning I jump on it just to like get my blood flowing. I look around the room here and just soak up and appreciate the work I put in and the accomplishments that I was blessed to have. So I have like the H over there is my high school Hall of Fame. This medal right here is towards the end of at the end of my junior year, in that summer I was struggling remember my first 3 years had no scholarships. I go to a showcase, finally developed a mindset I went off, and the University of Virginia coach saw me there and offered me a scholarship like a month later. So that medal right there changed the trajectory of my life. That's the UVA Hall of Fame little plaque. My home run, my first big league at bat right here, and I have the ball right there.
Oh, awesome.
The World Series jersey. I have a Shohei Ohtani signed ball because that means a lot to me. I got, it was around him last year, and he's going to go down as one of the best players, so I put that there. And then the MLM workbook, just to signify like all of that led to Major League mindset. So it's part of my routine where I just look at that every single morning.
No, I love it. I love it. And one last question. I've heard this story before, but it's been a long time since it's been kind of revealed. Can you briefly tell a story about how you met your wife? Because I love this story. I know I wrote a piece on this years ago when I found out what had gone on, and it deserves to be told again because it's just an awesome story. Do you mind?
Of course not. Goosebumps as you say that, like just thinking about and not shown on. So to the left of that H is, let me see if I can get it here, is her Emmy. I don't know if you can see that.
Yeah, I do.
She won an Emmy. And that brings me into the answer because she was a sports reporter. But before that was an Emmy when she was at Fox 5 in DC, but she was a sports reporter in Charlottesville where I was playing at University of Virginia. I was a junior. She had already graduated college and was working as a sports reporter there. People asked, I knew she was going to interview me in 3 days. And so I had a bet with teammates, like, they were like, you won't ask her out. You won't ask her out. And I was so nervous the whole interview. And her biggest thing was I would run into walls all the time. She's like, are you fearless or are you reckless? She asked that a couple times during the interview. So then at the end, I was like, once her cameraman finally went away, I said, Lindsay, would it be fearless enough if I asked you out on a date right now? All my teammates are watching, just cracking up. And she said no. But whenever I would see her, I just talk to her and just, hey, I just kept pursuing it. I kind of liked the challenge. And then, hey, 3 kids later, we're married for almost 15 years now. And, yeah, crazy. I never got the $50 from the players, but I got the girl, so I'll take it.
How long was it before she finally said yes to the first date?
Oh man, not too long. Maybe a month or so. I can't remember exactly, but hey, you never know until you try. You don't make any shot that you don't shoot. So I just kept shooting.
It's such a great story and such a timely kind of capstone for the entire conversation that we've had. So just one final question that we asked to everybody on the show. It's a segment we call Who's Next? So knowing what this podcast is, all relating to Durham Bulls players, managers, coaches, personalities, etc. If Brandon Guyer could be the producer of the Durham Bulls podcast and have the guest of on the next show whose story you wanted to hear, who would that be?
Chris Archer.
Why?
First off, I love him. Second off, amazing guy. Very articulate, and a very interesting story. His work ethic, his process, his determination, what he went through. It's all inspiring. I think he would be absolutely amazing to have on.
Yeah, I loved him on this team as well. So Brandon, I can't thank you enough for your time. I took way too much of your time. I know you're busy with your schedule, busy with your family, and busy with your business. So great to spend some time with you. Thank you for your time, and best of luck. And let's not wait another 5 or 6 years before we do this again.
Yes, thank you for having me on, man. Great to see you, Patrick, and we'll do it again soon.
All right, so that's Brandon Guyer, the longtime lovable outfielder of the Durham Bulls, doing awesome things. So go back and check out Major League Mindset. He gave you the website earlier. You can find him on Instagram as well at Brandon Guyer. So that's going to wrap things up for the Durham Bulls podcast this week. A reminder, you can download this, follow, subscribe on Apple, on Spotify, and you can watch it also on youtube.com. Durham Bulls TV is our channel there. So for Brandon Guyer, for Jacoby, who does the production work behind this on the video side, and our entire crew, Patrick Kinas saying thank you for tuning in. Talk to you next week on the Durham Bulls podcast.